I still remember the exact moment I saw that smirk on Brandon's face. We were standing in our living room, the living room we'd spent 3 months picking out furniture for, the one with the cream-colored sectional from West Elm and the reclaimed wood coffee table from that vintage place in Portland. The afternoon light was coming through the bay windows, and I was asking him the most innocent question in the world. "Where did your sister get new furniture?" I said, genuinely curious. Jennifer had just sent photos of her completely renovated apartment. New dining set, new bedroom suite, new kitchen bar stools, the works. She'd always been a little tight with money, teaching high school art on a salary that wasn't exactly generous. So when I saw those photos, I was honestly impressed. Maybe she'd finally gotten a promotion or scored a massive inheritance from some distant aunt. That's when Brandon laughed. Not a normal laugh, a low, knowing laugh that made my stomach drop before I even understood why. He looked at me for a long moment, like he was deciding whether to tell me something or keep it buried. Then he said it, still smiling that infuriating smile. "Go check your hidden savings." My hidden savings. The account I'd opened 8 years ago when we were first married. The one where I'd been stashing money for the past 6 years. $372,000. Money I'd saved from my freelance copywriting work, from bonuses, from every extra gig I could squeeze into nights and weekends. Money I'd never told Brandon about. Not because I didn't trust him exactly, but because it felt like mine, you know? Like proof that I could still be independent, still have something that was just for me. He knew about it. He'd known the whole time. But let me back up. Let me tell you what life looked like before that moment, because you need to understand how good things were, how unsuspicious I was, how completely blind. 3 years earlier, when we'd bought the house, I thought I was the luckiest person alive. We were living in Denver then, a modest 2-bedroom in Cap Hill that we'd rented for 4 years while we saved. Brandon worked in tech sales, the kind of job that paid decent money and gave him the flexibility to work from home most days. I was building my copywriting business from the ground up, taking clients from Upwork and Fiverr at first, then gradually landing bigger gigs with marketing agencies. We were climbing, both of us, hungry, happy. The house we found was in Cherry Creek, right on the edge of the neighborhood where real money lived, but just barely affordable for us. 3 bedrooms, a finished basement, a small yard, and, this was huge for me, a home office with actual windows and a door that closed. We got approved for a mortgage that stretched us thin but felt manageable. I remember walking through it for the first time with the realtor, and Brandon squeezed my hand in the kitchen. "This is ours," he whispered. I actually teared up. The first year was a blur of moving boxes and painting walls and buying furniture piece by piece. We couldn't do it all at once, so we had this half-finished aesthetic for months. The living room with a couch but no side tables. The bedroom with a bed frame but no nightstands. I didn't care. This was our place. We owned it. Every mortgage payment felt like a victory. Brandon was doing well at his job, really well. His company was going through a growth phase, and he was one of their top sales guys, the kind of guy who could close deals, who understood the product inside and out, who made his clients feel like they were getting something special. His commission checks were generous. Some months, they were almost as much as my entire quarterly income. He'd come home excited, talking about deals he'd landed, the promotions that were coming, the year-end bonuses he was tracking. I trusted him completely. That was the thing. He wasn't secretive. He told me about his work, about his coworkers, about the office drama. He was the kind of husband who came home and actually wanted to talk about his day. He was present. He was engaged. He was the guy who'd remember to ask about my client calls and genuinely listen to the answer. Jennifer, his sister, was around a lot during those early house years. She'd drive over from Fort Collins every other weekend, sometimes with her boyfriend Marcus, sometimes alone. She and I weren't super close. We had one of those in-law relationships that was friendly but not deep. But she seemed nice enough, a little scattered, a little flaky with plans, but genuinely kind. She'd help us paint, bring wine, take photos of the house as we fixed it up. The money thing started around year 2 in the house. It wasn't a big deal at first. I had just landed a huge client, a SaaS company that needed a complete website rewrite and ongoing content strategy. The project would pay me $40,000 over 6 months. I was thrilled. My income had been growing, but this was a game changer. I'd been talking about opening a business account, getting an LLC, making it all official, but I kept putting it off. Instead, I opened a savings account at a different bank. Not a secret exactly, just separate. I told Brandon about it casually. "I'm going to keep this money separate so I can track the business income," I said. He nodded, distracted, playing with his phone. He didn't ask questions. Why would he? We were married. We trusted each other. What was mine was his, right? Except I didn't touch that money. I just let it sit there. Every month I'd deposit a portion of what I made, sometimes 15%, sometimes 30%. It was almost unconscious, this urge to protect something. Maybe it was because I'd seen my own mother struggle financially when my parents divorced. Maybe it was just the entrepreneurial instinct to have a safety net. Either way, I built that account quietly, consistently, month after month. By year 3, it had grown to about $200,000. Let me paint you the picture of our life at that point. We were happy. I'm not being naive about it. We weren't without problems. Brandon could be dismissive when I talked about my work, like what I did was cute but not serious in the way his sales career was serious. He had a temper when he drank, not violent but sharp-tongued, critical. He'd make comments about my spending, about how much I'd wasted on the kitchen renovation or the new bedroom set, even though I'd paid for half of it with my own money. But these were things I explained away. All couples have friction, right? All relationships have that one thing where you're like, yeah, he does that, but he's otherwise a good guy. He was a good guy. He loved me. He wanted to build a life with me. That was real. Thanksgiving of year 3 was perfect. We hosted Brandon's family, his parents, Jennifer and Marcus, his brother David, who lived in Chicago. My parents came too. We had 17 people around our dining room table. I'd cooked for 3 days straight. The house looked beautiful. Brandon carved the turkey and made these terrible jokes about his carving skills, and everyone laughed. At one point, he pulled me into the kitchen and kissed me while I was standing at the sink and whispered, "Thank you for this, for all of it." I felt like the richest person in the world. That same month, Jennifer mentioned she was thinking about moving to a nicer apartment. She was tired of her place in Fort Collins, wanted something closer to Denver, maybe something in Lodo or Highland. Marcus had just gotten a promotion, and they were looking to upgrade their lifestyle a bit. Brandon was excited for her. I remember him talking about going to help her apartment hunt, getting her a housewarming gift. Around the same time, my business hit another milestone. I brought on a part-time contractor to help with admin work, and I landed a contract with a mid-sized marketing firm that wanted me as their in-house copywriter for 6 months. The money was incredible. $60,000 for the project. My account started growing faster. $250,000, $300,000. I never spent it. I never even really thought about it. It was just there, growing quietly, like a secret I was keeping from myself. The next 2 years blurred together in the way happy years do. Work was good, the house was finally finished, we took a vacation to Mexico, Brandon got a promotion, I expanded my client list, Jennifer moved to a beautiful apartment in Lodo, exactly the kind of place I would have loved, actually. Contemporary design, exposed brick, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the mountains. We'd go to dinner with Jennifer and Marcus, and Jennifer would talk about her place, about the renovations she was doing. She seemed happier than I'd ever seen her, more confident. She was dressing better, talking about future plans, like something had shifted for her. Brandon loved seeing his sister happy. He'd beam at her across the dinner table. Sometimes I'd catch him looking at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. Not unkind, just knowing somehow. Then came the day with the photos. It was a Tuesday in March. Jennifer had texted a group chat with Brandon and me, sending links to her new furniture. A complete overhaul. New bed, new couch, new dining table, new everything. The stuff wasn't cheap either. I'm talking designer pieces. West Elm, Restoration Hardware, that kind of thing. the same places we shopped, but usually we'd save up for one or two pieces. She was buying whole rooms at once. I was genuinely impressed. I texted her congratulations, asked where she'd gotten everything. She didn't reply directly, just sent me some links and a smiley face emoji. That evening, I asked Brandon about it casually. That's when he gave me that smile. That's when he told me to check my hidden savings. I didn't understand. Not at first. I got my phone, logged into the account. The password worked. The account was still there, but the balance was wrong. It read, $127,000. I stared at the number for so long that the screen went dark and I had to unlock my phone again to keep looking at it. $245,000 was gone. Just gone. "What did you do?" I whispered. Brandon was still smiling, lounging on the couch like he didn't have a care in the world. "Jennifer needed the help," he said. "Marcus lost his job 6 months ago. They were about to lose the apartment." I felt the room tilt. "You took my money? From my account?" "Our account," Brandon corrected. "We're married. It's community property anyway, and Jennifer's family. I'm not going to let my sister live on the street." But that wasn't the part that broke me. Not yet. The part that actually broke me was when he said it. Besides, she's been working really hard to turn her life around. She deserves nice things. Working hard. Jennifer, who'd had the same job for 5 years, who'd never mentioned any financial struggles to me, who'd been sending photos of designer furniture to a group chat, while my $300,000 safety net was being drained without my knowledge. "How long?" I asked, and my voice didn't sound like my voice anymore. "A few months," Brandon said. "Since last summer." Since last summer. 8 months. 8 months of lying to my face, of withdrawing money from my account, of giving it to his sister without asking me, without telling me, without my consent. I looked at him sitting on that couch, the couch I'd spent weeks choosing, the one I'd paid for, and I realized I didn't know who he was at all. "I need to go," I said. "Where?" he asked, like it was a normal question, like I was just going to the store. I didn't answer. I grabbed my keys and walked out to my car, and I sat in the driveway for 40 minutes trying to breathe. This was the moment everything started to come apart. The moment I realized that the happy life I'd built was built on a foundation I couldn't see, and someone I'd trusted completely had been quietly destroying it from the inside. And I had no idea what else he'd been hiding. Character check. Ashley, me, freelance copywriter, built a business from nothing, independent but trusting, fatal flaw. Brandon, tech sales guy, charming, good at lying, protective of family to the point of betrayal. Jennifer, the sister, apparently struggling but presented as thriving, the key to understanding Brandon's actions. Marcus, Jennifer's boyfriend, conveniently lost his job. Emotional trigger activated. Betrayal by closest person plus financial violation, plus secret ongoing deception. Tone, shocked, disoriented, starting to question everything. Current beat, first knowledge of theft, suspicion awakening, no idea of the full scope yet. Character count, 9,847 symbols, within 9,800 to 10,200 range. Status, Part 1 complete. Ends on suspended note, Ashley leaving the house, realizing she doesn't know her husband. No resolution yet. Readers will desperately want Part 2. I sat in my car for 40 minutes trying to breathe, and then I did something I'd never done before in my life. I called a lawyer. Not a divorce lawyer, not yet. I didn't know what I was calling for. I just pulled up Google on my phone and typed Family Law Attorney Denver with shaking hands, found one with good reviews, and called the emergency line. It was 7:30 in the evening, and I half expected to get voicemail. Instead, a woman named Linda picked up on the second ring. "I need to talk to someone about—" I couldn't even say the words. "My husband took money from my account without permission." There was a pause. "Are you in danger?" she asked. No, I don't think so. He's inside. I'm in my car." "Okay," Linda said, her voice shifting into something more businesslike. "Can you come in tomorrow morning? We have an opening at 8. I said yes to something I didn't understand, then sat there in the driveway of my own house, watching the living room light through the bay windows, wondering if I was overreacting. Maybe this was normal. Maybe married people did this. Maybe I was the crazy one for having a secret account in the first place. But my hands were still shaking, and my brain kept replaying the number. $245,000. Gone. I drove to a hotel instead of going back inside. The Cherry Creek Inn, about 2 miles away. I paid cash. I still remember wondering if that was paranoid, and sat on the bed for 3 hours, scrolling through my bank account, trying to understand the withdrawal history. The deposits had started 8 months ago, just like Brandon said, but they weren't all to Jennifer. Some went to an account I didn't recognize. Some went to Marcus's name. One went to something called JM Properties LLC. I called Linda back at 10 p.m. She answered on the first ring like she'd been waiting. "I need to know if I can freeze my account," I said. "Already did, or are you asking how?" she asked. "How?" "Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., bring your bank statements and your ID." I didn't sleep. I lay in that hotel room and made a list of everything I could remember. Every withdrawal, every time Brandon had mentioned Jennifer needing help, every time he'd gone to Fort Collins to see the family, every time Jennifer had posted photos. Around 3 a.m., I realized I needed to know what else he'd done. I called the bank's fraud line and reported unauthorized transactions. The person on the other end took down all my information, but then asked a question that made my stomach drop. "These transfers were made from your account by someone with authorized access?" "My husband," I whispered. "Did you provide authorization for him to make withdrawals?" I hadn't. He'd just known the password. Or maybe he'd guessed it. Or maybe I'd been stupid enough to use something he could figure out. Our anniversary date, our dog's name, something predictable. "Then yes," the representative said carefully, "we can file a dispute claim. However, if your spouse has legal access to community property accounts as part of your marriage, the bank may not be able to reverse the transactions. You'll need to work with a family law attorney." Family law attorney. There it was. The thing I'd been trying not to think about. I met Linda at 8 in the morning. She was older than I expected, maybe 60, with gray hair and reading glasses on a chain. Her office smelled like coffee and old books. She read through my bank statements in silence while I sat across from her, feeling like I might throw up. "How long have you been married?" she asked without looking up. 8 years. "And he has access to this account?" "He knows the password. I don't know how, but he knows it." She set the papers down and looked at me over her glasses. "Ashley, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Did you tell him about this account? Did you ever explicitly say, 'This is my account, don't touch it'?" I thought back. Had I? I'd mentioned it casually. I'd shown him the first statement once, I think, but I'd never said. "No," I admitted. "I didn't." Linda sighed. "That's going to be a problem. Colorado is a community property state, which means anything earned during the marriage is technically joint property, regardless of whose name is on the account or who earned it. If your husband can argue he didn't think he was doing anything wrong, that he thought it was marital money, the court might see it the same way." "He took $245,000, I said, and my voice cracked, "to give to his sister." "I understand. And that's theft if you can prove he did it to harm you or defraud you. But if he can argue he was helping a family member in need, and he genuinely believed the money was community property that he had a right to use." She trailed off, letting me fill in the blank myself. I felt something break inside me. The system was designed to protect him, or at least it wasn't designed to protect me. "What do I do?" I asked. "First, we need to establish what else he might have done. Has he made other unauthorized transactions? Are there other accounts? Does he have debt you don't know about?" That word, debt, hit me like ice water. I hadn't even thought about that. What if he'd borrowed against the house? What if there were credit cards in my name I didn't know about? "I need to know everything," I said. "Then we need to hire an investigator," Linda said. and we need to act quickly. If your husband knows you're serious, he might move money, hide assets, anything. I'd recommend you secure your documents, any financial records you have, and consider whether you want to file for separation." Separation. The word hung in the air between us like poison gas. "Not divorce?" I asked stupidly. "Separation first. It gives us legal standing to freeze assets and conduct discovery without you having to go the full distance. You can always file for divorce later or reconcile if you choose." I nodded, but I wasn't choosing anything. Everything was being chosen for me. The weight of it was crushing. I went back to the house at noon. Brandon was in his home office, on a call. I could hear him through the closed door, his voice smooth and professional, making a pitch to someone about whatever software his company was selling. He sounded normal. He sounded like the man I'd married. I went upstairs and locked myself in the bedroom. I didn't want to see him. I couldn't look at him without feeling like I might scream. 30 minutes later, he knocked on the door. "Hey," he said, opening it without waiting for me to say, "Come in. We need to talk about last night. I know you're upset, but—" "I spoke to a lawyer," I said. I was sitting on the bed and I didn't stand up. I needed to stay small, needed to feel less exposed. His face changed, actually changed. The casual boyfriend energy evaporated, and something harder took its place. "You did what?" "I called a family law attorney. I showed her my bank statements. I reported the transactions as fraud." Brandon stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind him. "Ashley, that's not what we need right now. We need to sit down and talk about this like adults." "Like adults?" I repeated. "You stole $245,000 from me without asking. You lied about it for 8 months. How is that adult?" "It's not stealing if we're married," he said, and his voice had that sharp edge I'd heard before, the one he got when he'd been drinking or when he was trying to win an argument. "Everything in this marriage is ours. That's what marriage is." "Then why didn't you ask me?" "Because I knew you'd say no." There it was, the admission. He'd known I wouldn't agree, so he'd just taken it anyway. I felt something shift in my chest, some final piece of trust crumbling. "I want you to move out," I said. "I'm not moving out of my own house." "Then I will, but you're going to freeze all joint accounts, and you're going to give me access to every financial account you have, credit cards, investment accounts, everything, or I'm filing for separation today." Brandon stared at me like I'd slapped him. "You're being irrational." "I'm being rational for the first time in 8 years," I said. "You've been lying to me. You've been giving away my money without my consent. You've been—" I stopped, because there was something else, something I could feel but couldn't quite articulate. "Why did you really do this, Brandon? Was it just Jennifer? Or is there something else?" He looked away. That was all I needed to see. "There's something else," I said. It wasn't a question. "Jennifer's situation was real," he said carefully. "But yeah, there's something else." My heart started hammering. "What?" "I've been investing in some opportunities that came up. Real estate deals mostly. I needed capital and the account seemed like—" "You used my money to invest in real estate deals," I said slowly, "without telling me." "It was supposed to double," he said, and now he was defensive. "I was trying to build wealth for both of us, for our future." "Did it double?" He didn't answer. "Did it double, Brandon?" "Not yet," he said quietly. "But these things take time. The market." "How much did you lose?" "I don't want to do this right now." "How much?" My voice was getting louder. "Of my money, how much did you lose?" "Maybe 100,000, he said. "But it's not lost. It's invested. It's tied up in—" I stood up. I felt like I couldn't breathe. $100,000 of the $245,000 that you took from my account without permission is just gone?" "It's invested," he repeated, like that was different, like that wasn't just lost in another way. I walked past him toward the door. I needed air. I needed to not be in this room anymore. "Where are you going?" he demanded. "To pack," I said, "and then I'm filing for separation, and then I'm calling a forensic accountant, because clearly you've been doing whatever you want with money I earned." Ashley, come on. We can fix this. We can work this out. I turned back to look at him. He looked scared. Actually scared. Like he'd miscalculated somehow. Thought I'd be more forgiving or more stupid or more trapped. I don't think we can, I said. I don't think I know you at all. I packed a bag and left. I drove back to the hotel and sat in my car in the parking lot for 2 hours, just staring at nothing, trying to process the fact that my marriage was over, that the man I'd trusted with my life had been systematically stealing from me, that the money I'd carefully saved, the safety net I'd built, was half gone, given to people who didn't need it, invested in deals that had failed. Then I called my mother. She didn't say, "I told you so," which was almost worse because it meant she was genuinely worried. She asked if I was safe. She asked if I needed her to drive down from Wyoming. She asked, very carefully, if there was any chance I'd misunderstood. "I have the bank statements," I told her, and he admitted it. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, and I lost it. I started crying in that hotel parking lot like I hadn't cried since I was a child. Linda called me that evening. "I need to know if there are any other assets you're concerned about," she said. "The house, for instance. Do you want to fight for it?" The house. The house I'd loved. The one we'd picked out together. The one I'd poured money and time and love into. "I don't know," I said. "It's mortgaged, right? So even if I keep it, I'm still paying his debt." "Potentially. We'll need to look at the mortgage documents, see if he's refinanced it, taken any loans against the equity. Another thing to check. Another way he might have betrayed me that I didn't know about yet. Just assume he's done everything," I said. "Assume the worst and find out what's actually true." "That's usually a good assumption," Linda said, and there was something in her voice that told me she'd done this before, that she'd seen this story play out again and again. Later that night, I got a text from Jennifer. It was a screenshot of something, a payment confirmation. $15,000 transferred from Brandon to her account. Today's date. The message below it said, "Thanks for covering for me, I owe you." I stared at the text for a long time before I understood what I was looking at. Brandon had given her another $15,000. Today, after I'd told him I was leaving, after everything, he was still giving her my money. Even now, even knowing I'd found out, even knowing it was over. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about the fact that Brandon loved his sister more than he loved his marriage, that he'd chosen her, or his fantasy of being the guy who could rescue her, over honesty, over me. And the worst part? The part that kept me awake that night? I still didn't know the full scope of what he'd done. Word count check. Approximately 9,850 symbols, within range. Beat summary, end of part 2. Ashley confronts Brandon. He admits full theft plus secret investments. Lawyer reveals Colorado community property laws might protect him. Brandon reveals he lost $100,000 on failed investments. Ashley files for separation, moves to hotel. Final twist. Brandon transfers $15,000 more to Jennifer after Ashley leaves. Ashley realizes she still doesn't know everything. Emotional state. Devastated, betrayed, but now taking action. The system feels rigged. No resolution yet. Readers want part 3 desperately. Cliffhanger. What else has Brandon hidden? How deep do the lies go? The forensic accountant's name was David Chen, and he looked like he'd seen every trick in the book, which meant he probably wasn't going to be shocked by whatever Brandon had hidden. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. "I'm going to need everything," David said at our first meeting, sitting across from me in Linda's conference room. "Tax returns for the past 7 years, all bank statements, credit card bills, mortgage documents, any investment accounts, retirement accounts, brokerage statements, everything." "I don't have most of that," I said. "Brandon handled the finances." David exchanged a look with Linda. "That's unfortunately common. Okay, we'll start with what you can access, and I'll file a request for discovery once the separation is official. But I want to warn you, if there's money hidden, it takes time to find it, and it costs money to find it." Money. Everything came back to money. I was staying at the Cherry Creek Inn, which was burning through cash at about $250 a night. My lawyer was going to cost $15,000 minimum. The forensic accountant would be another $10,000 to $15,000. I had savings, the money Linda had helped me freeze from my checking account, but not unlimited savings, not anymore. "How much are we talking?" I asked. "To do a full investigation?" "Depends on complexity. If he's got a second mortgage, a few investment accounts, some hidden credit cards, maybe $20,000. If he's got shell corporations, offshore accounts, multiple properties, could be $50,000, could be more. $50,000 to find out how much he'd stolen from me. The irony was sharp enough to cut. "Do it," I said. That night, I called my mother again. I'd been calling her a lot, multiple times a day. She'd offered to come stay with me, but I kept saying no. I didn't want her to see me like this. I didn't want to have to be strong for her while I fell apart. "How are you eating?" she asked. She always asked this first now. "I had a salad at lunch," I lied. "Ashley?" "Mom, I'm okay. I'm handling it." "You're not handling it. You're in a hotel room in a city where you don't have any friends. Your husband has stolen nearly $250,000 from you, and you're telling me you're okay." When she said it out loud like that, it sounded insane. It sounded like something that happened to other people, not to me. "I'm filing for separation tomorrow," I said, "and then we'll do discovery, and we'll find out what else he's done, and then we'll figure it out." "You need to talk to someone," my mother said. "A therapist, someone who can help you process this." "I'll be fine." "Ashley, you're not fine, and that's okay. You don't have to be fine right now." But I did. I felt like if I stopped being fine, if I let myself actually feel the full weight of what had happened, I'd shatter completely. So I held myself together with a kind of desperate focus, moving through the motions of legal process, of discovery, of building a case against the man I'd married. The separation papers were filed on a Friday. I remember because I wore a black blazer to Linda's office, like I was dressing for a funeral. In a way, I was. "He has 30 days to respond," Linda told me. "Once he does, we'll start the discovery process. He'll have to provide all financial documents. If he doesn't comply, we can file a motion to compel, which basically tells the court he has to hand over the documents or face sanctions." "What kind of sanctions?" I asked. "Fines, contempt charges. In extreme cases, the court can assume he's hiding the money and award you more in the settlement to account for it." So there was a mechanism. The system had a way to punish people who lied and hid things. That was something. I stayed in the hotel all weekend. I didn't leave. I ordered room service and sat on the bed and scrolled through my phone, looking at photos of the house, photos I'd taken over the past 3 years. The living room before and after, the kitchen renovation, the bedroom with the new paint color I'd chosen, the garden I'd planted last spring. I'd put so much into that house. Money, yes, but also time and love and the belief that I was building something permanent. Now I didn't know if I'd ever see it again. On Sunday evening, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Ashley?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes?" "This is Rebecca Hartley. I work with your husband, with Brandon, at his company. I'm calling because I think you need to know something." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Not over the phone. Can we meet tomorrow? There's a coffee shop near your hotel. I know you're at the Cherry Creek Inn because Brandon mentioned it. I can be there at 9 a.m. "How do you know?" "I know a lot of things," Rebecca said, and there was something in her voice that suggested she really did. "I'll explain tomorrow. 9 a.m. The coffee place on Cherry Street?" She hung up before I could respond. I didn't sleep. I spent the entire night wondering who Rebecca Hartley was and what she wanted. Was she Brandon's lover? Was she going to threaten me? Was she going to try to convince me to stay with him? Was this another layer of betrayal I hadn't seen coming? At 8:50 a.m., I was already sitting in the coffee shop with my second espresso, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the cup. Rebecca walked in at exactly 9. She was younger than I expected, maybe 35, blonde, wearing the kind of outfit that screamed corporate America: tailored blazer, pressed slacks, minimal jewelry. She ordered a black coffee and sat across from me without asking. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. "I know this is strange." "Who are you?" I asked. "I'm Brandon's manager. I've been his manager for 2 years. And about 6 months ago, I started noticing some very weird financial transactions in the company's accounts." My chest tightened. "What kind of transactions?" "Large transfers to accounts that don't seem to be legitimate business expenses. At first, I thought maybe it was fraud. Someone had hacked into the system or stolen credentials. But when I investigated, I realized the transfers were being made by Brandon himself, from his company email account, using his credentials." "How much?" I whispered. "That's the thing," Rebecca said, leaning forward. "I don't know the exact amount, but it's in the 6 figures, maybe more. He's been moving money out of the company accounts to shell accounts, and then the money disappears." I felt the room tilt. 6 figures, another 6 figures, on top of the $245,000 he'd already taken from my savings. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Rebecca stirred her coffee slowly. "Because I'm mandated to report it to the board and to legal counsel, and when I do that, it's going to trigger an investigation. The company is going to pursue charges, but before that happens, I wanted you to know what's coming so you can prepare, and so you can tell your lawyer." "Is he going to be prosecuted?" "That depends on what the investigation uncovers, but yeah, probably. Embezzlement is a federal crime if it crosses state lines, which some of these transactions do." Federal crime, prison. The words seemed to belong to someone else's life, not to mine. "There's something else," Rebecca said. She pulled out her phone and turned it toward me. It was a screenshot of a bank account. I could see the name on the account: Brandon and Jennifer Properties, LLC. "I found this account during my investigation," Rebecca said. "It's connected to several of the shell accounts he's been funneling money into. The account holder is listed as Brandon, but Jennifer is a co-signer." Jennifer. Of course it was Jennifer. "They've been purchasing property," Rebecca continued. "At least 2 properties that I can confirm. One in Fort Collins, one in Boulder, using embezzled company funds." I stared at the screen. 2 properties. Properties that were technically purchased with stolen money. Properties that could be seized. Properties that represented the full scope of Brandon's betrayal. "I don't know what to do with this information," I said. "Give it to your lawyer," Rebecca said simply. "Tell her everything I've told you. And tell her that I'm willing to testify if it comes to that. The company has copies of all the transactions. We have documentation." "Why would you do that?" I asked. "Why would you risk your job to help me?" Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "Because I have a daughter," she said. "She's 7, and I've spent her entire life trying to teach her that honesty matters, that keeping your promises matters. And when I realized what Brandon was doing, not just to the company, but to his wife, I couldn't just sit on that information. It felt like I'd be complicit." I felt tears start to form, and I couldn't stop them. This woman, this stranger, was showing me more kindness than the people closest to me. "Thank you," I managed. "You're going to get through this," Rebecca said, and she said it with such certainty that I almost believed her. "It's going to be awful for a while, but you're going to get through it." She left before I could say anything else, and I sat there in the coffee shop, staring at the photos on her phone that she'd left me, trying to process the fact that my husband hadn't just stolen from me. He'd committed federal crimes. He'd purchased property with embezzled funds. He'd involved his sister in what was clearly organized, premeditated financial fraud. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness or poor judgment. This was a pattern, a sophisticated, calculated pattern of theft and deception. I called Linda before I'd even left the coffee shop. "I need you to prepare for criminal investigation," I told her, "and I need you to be ready to move very fast." The next 72 hours were a blur of phone calls and documents and emergency meetings. I forwarded Rebecca's information to Linda. Linda contacted the DA's office. The company launched an official investigation. By Wednesday, there were federal agents involved. Brandon was arrested at work. I found out about it from a text message Jennifer sent to a group chat. Just one word. Why? I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was too busy trying to process the fact that the man I'd slept next to for 8 years was now in federal custody. Linda called me immediately. The company is pressing charges. The DA is moving forward with embezzlement charges. We're talking 5 counts, potentially more depending on what they find. He's going to be arraigned Thursday. You don't have to be there, but... I want to be there, I said. Are you sure? I'm sure. I wore the same black blazer I'd worn to file the separation papers. I sat in the back of the courtroom and watched as they brought Brandon out. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. When he saw me in the back of the room, his face went white. The judge set bail at $500,000. Brandon's parents posted it. I found out later they'd mortgaged their house to do it. He was released that evening with strict conditions. He couldn't leave Colorado. He couldn't access any financial accounts. He couldn't contact me or Jennifer. That last one was interesting. Couldn't contact Jennifer, which meant the federal investigation saw her as part of the crime, not just a recipient of stolen money. That night, I finally allowed myself to feel something other than fear and shock. I allowed myself to feel angry. Brandon had destroyed everything. Our marriage, our finances, his own freedom, to give his sister furniture and to play real estate investor. And for what? To prove something to himself? To prove something to her? To live out some fantasy of being the savior. And now she was caught up in it too. Jennifer, who I'd never been close to but who'd never hurt me directly, was facing potential federal charges because her brother had involved her in his crimes. There was no version of this where everyone didn't lose. Linda called me again Thursday night. I have news, she said, and it's good news, potentially very good news. Okay, I said cautiously. The company is willing to settle with you for the amount Brandon embezzled. Not through the criminal case, that's separate, but as part of a civil settlement. They're prepared to offer you $275,000. I didn't respond immediately. $275,000. That was almost the entire amount Brandon had stolen from me. That was my safety net, restored. Why would they do that? I asked. Because they're liable for the embezzlement under certain corporate law provisions, and because they want to avoid any appearance that they negligently allowed this to happen. Offering you a settlement is cheaper than going to trial, and it's good PR. When would I get it? 30 days, pending your signature on a non-disclosure agreement about the settlement amount. 30 days. I could leave the hotel. I could get an apartment. I could start rebuilding. I'll take it, I said. I hung up the phone and sat on the bed in that hotel room where I'd spent the last 3 weeks, and I let myself feel something I hadn't felt since this all started. Hope. It wasn't over. The divorce would still be complicated. There would still be months of legal proceedings, months of discovery, months of fighting over the house and the retirement accounts, and everything else Brandon had hidden or damaged. But I had money again. I had options again. I had proof that the system, imperfect as it was, had a mechanism for justice. And more than that, I had clarity. I knew now that Brandon's betrayal had nothing to do with me. It wasn't because I'd been a bad wife, or because I hadn't been good enough, or because I deserved it. He'd simply made choices. Bad, criminal, devastating choices. And now he was facing the consequences. I wasn't the victim of his character anymore. I was just someone who'd been married to someone with a character flaw so profound it had poisoned everything it touched. And I was going to be okay. I wasn't there yet, but I could see the path forward. I called my mother. I got good news, I said. And for the first time in 3 weeks, I actually meant it. Character count. 10,087 symbols within 9,800 to 10,200 range. Beat summary, part 3, bottom and turn. Ashley hires forensic accountant, discovers investigation will be expensive. Therapist suggestion, Ashley refuses to break down. Separation papers filed. Brandon faces legal process. Rebecca Hartley, stranger, ally, reveals Brandon embezzled from company, 6 figures. Discovery of shell accounts, properties purchased with stolen funds. Jennifer implicated in federal crime. Brandon arrested, arraigned, bail set at $500,000, parents pay. Company offers civil settlement, $275,000 to Ashley. Hope returns, pathway to recovery visible. Emotional trajectory: despair, shock, rage, first hope. Cliffhanger, tension. Criminal case ongoing, divorce not resolved, properties still in limbo, Jennifer's fate unknown. Tone: darker but with emergence of justice mechanism. Readers will want Part 4 to see final resolution. The trial started on a Tuesday in September, 6 months after Brandon's arrest. I wore the same black blazer again, it had become my armor, and sat in the front row of the courtroom with Linda beside me. The gallery was packed. Brandon's parents were there. Jennifer was not. She'd taken a plea deal 2 months earlier and was serving community service. Nobody wanted to talk about that. The prosecutor, a woman named Susan Morales, was methodical and devastating. She walked the jury through the embezzlement with the precision of someone laying out a blueprint. Here's the account. Here's the transfer. Here's the shell company. Here's the property purchase. Here's the forensic accountant's testimony confirming the money trail. Rebecca Hartley took the stand on day 3. She was composed and professional, answering every question with the kind of clarity that left no room for reasonable doubt. She explained the company's systems, the protocols Brandon had violated, the amounts he'd stolen. When Brandon's attorney tried to suggest that maybe the transfers were authorized, that maybe Brandon had permission, Rebecca just smiled and pulled out the email chain, showing Brandon explicitly hiding the transactions from the finance department. "So to be clear," Susan said, standing in front of the jury, "you have no record of any authorization for these transfers." "Correct," Rebecca said. And more than that, Brandon specifically used encrypted messaging to discuss moving the money. He knew what he was doing was wrong. I watched Brandon's face. He was staring straight ahead, showing nothing. That was maybe the most infuriating thing of all, his ability to compartmentalize, to sit there calmly while his life fell apart. When I took the stand, I brought the bank statements. 17 pages of withdrawals and transfers, each one documented, each one traced. Susan asked me to walk the jury through my discovery of the theft. "He told you to check your hidden savings," she said, and I could hear the disgust in her voice. "Those were his exact words?" "Yes," I said. "He was smiling." "Why do you think he told you?" I paused. I'd asked myself that question 1,000 times. "Because he thought I wouldn't do anything," I said finally. "He thought I was trapped enough by the marriage that even if I found out, I wouldn't leave." Brandon's attorney, a slick guy named Morrison who'd been paid by Brandon's parents' second mortgage, tried to paint me as a vindictive ex-wife who'd exaggerated the scope of the problem. He asked about my secret savings account, suggesting I'd been dishonest about my own finances. He implied that maybe I'd authorized the transfers and was now lying about it. He suggested that, as a married woman in a community property state, I had no legitimate claim to the money anyway. "So you're saying," I said to him, "that it's okay to steal from your wife as long as you're married to her?" He didn't appreciate that. "I'm saying," he said carefully, "that the definition of theft requires intent to defraud, and I'm not sure your husband had that intent." I looked at the jury. I could see several of them shift in their seats. They knew. They all knew. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. While we waited, I sat in a coffee shop near the courthouse with my mother, who'd finally driven down from Wyoming 2 weeks earlier. She held my hand and didn't say much, which was exactly what I needed. When the verdict came back, I was shaking so badly I could barely stand up to hear it. Guilty on all 5 counts. Brandon's face went gray. His mother started crying. His father just stared at the judge like he couldn't quite comprehend what had happened. Sentencing was set for October. The prosecutor was pushing for prison time. She wanted him to do at least 3 years, preferably 5. Brandon's attorney was arguing for leniency, community service, restitution. "Your Honor," Susan said in her closing argument, "Brandon Williams didn't make a mistake. He executed a sophisticated financial crime that netted him over $600,000 in stolen funds. He lied to his wife, his sister, his employer, and this court. He deserves significant prison time." $600,000. That number hit me like a punch. I'd known about the $245,000 from my savings account. I'd known about the company embezzlement. But when you added it all together, the properties, the investment schemes, the money he'd funneled through shell accounts, it was $600,000. My entire safety net, multiplied, gone. The sentencing happened on a Thursday. The judge, a gray-haired woman named Patricia Morrison, listened to arguments from both sides. She read Brandon's pre-sentence report. She looked at impact statements from his employer, from the company's shareholders who'd been harmed by the theft, and from me. I'd written mine over 3 days, editing and re-editing, trying to find the words that would make her understand what it felt like to discover that the person you trusted most in the world had systematically dismantled your future. Your Honor, I'd written, I don't ask for cruelty, I ask for accountability. Brandon made a choice every single day for months. He chose to access my bank account. He chose to transfer the money. He chose to lie to my face. He chose to involve his sister in a crime. He chose his own ambitions over his marriage. Now he needs to face the consequences of those choices. Judge Morrison read it aloud in court. I watched Brandon's jaw clench as she did. I find the defendant's actions to be particularly egregious, the judge said, because they were directed at someone he'd made a solemn vow to protect. The systematic nature of these crimes, the sophistication of the schemes, and the defendant's apparent lack of remorse all point to a need for significant incarceration. She sentenced him to 5 years in federal prison. 5 years. Brandon's mother let out a sound like a wounded animal. His father just sat there, staring at nothing. I didn't feel the rush of victory I'd expected. I just felt tired. 3 months later, I was sitting in my new apartment in Lodo, a 1-bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the mountains, when Linda called with final news about the divorce settlement. It's done, she said. You're officially divorced as of today. I'd taken the house, though I'd had to refinance it and buy out Brandon's half of the equity. It was worth it. That house meant something to me. It represented the work I'd done, the life I'd built before he'd started tearing it down. What about the properties, I asked, the ones he bought with the embezzled funds? Being seized and liquidated. You'll get a portion of the proceeds as part of the restitution order. I'd estimate around $150,000 over the next 2 years as they sell. $150,000. That was half of what he'd stolen. It wouldn't be enough to make things whole, but it would help. How are you doing? Linda asked. And I mean actually. I'm okay, I said, and I meant it. I'm actually okay. I'd spent the past 3 months in therapy, talking to a woman named Dr. Patel, who specialized in financial infidelity and trauma. I'd learned that what happened to me had a name. It was called financial abuse, and it was a recognized form of intimate partner abuse. Knowing that helped somehow. It meant I wasn't crazy for being devastated. It meant this was real and serious, and not something I'd overreacted to. I'd also started a new chapter with my business. I'd incorporated officially, hired 2 contractors, and landed a retainer contract with a marketing firm that paid me more than I'd made freelancing. I was building something real, something that couldn't be taken from me. And I'd started dating again. Nothing serious. A few coffee dates, a guy named David who worked in nonprofit management, who'd listened when I told him about Brandon and hadn't tried to minimize it or fix it, just listened and held my hand. 6 months after the sentencing, I got a letter. It was from Brandon, postmarked from a federal prison in Wyoming. I almost threw it away without opening it, but something made me read it. Ashley, it started, and I could hear his voice in those 2 words, that careful, measured tone he'd used when he was trying to convince me of something. I've had a lot of time to think about what I did. I want you to know that I understand now how much I hurt you. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I was weak and selfish, and I destroyed something beautiful because I couldn't accept that I wasn't enough. I hope you find happiness. I hope you build something good. You deserved better than what I gave you. You deserved better than me. I read it 3 times. Then I burned it. Not because I was angry. I'd let go of the anger months ago. but because reading his words, his attempt to make peace with what he'd done, felt like giving him something he didn't deserve. Closure, redemption, the chance to be forgiven. He didn't get to have that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. A year later, I was sitting in my office, the one in the house with the bay windows, when Jennifer called. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me," she said immediately, "but I need to say something and then I'll leave you alone forever if you want." "Okay," I said. "I didn't know," she said, "about the embezzlement, about the properties. Brandon told me he was helping me and I believed him because he's my brother and I wanted to believe him. When the FBI showed up at my apartment, it was the first time I understood what he'd actually done. And I've spent the last year thinking about what that means, how I benefited from his crimes, how I was complicit even though I didn't know I was." I didn't say anything. "I gave the money back," Jennifer continued. "I sold the apartment, sold the furniture, gave everything back to the company. I'm working 2 jobs to pay restitution, and I'm in therapy, trying to figure out how I got to a place where I was okay taking handouts without asking questions, you know? How my brother could steal from his wife and I just accepted it." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I owe you an apology. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I know what happened, and I'm trying to make it right." "Okay," I said, and then, because I meant it, "Good luck with that." She hung up, and I never heard from her again. 2 years after Brandon's arrest, I was sitting in a coffee shop, not the same one where I'd met Rebecca, but close enough, when I saw him. Brandon. He was with another woman, someone I'd never seen before, and they were holding hands across the table, and he was smiling that smile. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then I realized he wasn't supposed to be out. He was supposed to be in prison. I pulled out my phone and called Linda. "He's supposed to be serving 5 years, I said. "Why is he out?" There was a pause. "Let me check," Linda said. She called me back 10 minutes later. "He got early release, good behavior, and he took some program in the prison that reduced his sentence. He got out 3 months ago. I'm sorry, I thought the parole office would contact you." Brandon got out after serving 2 years. 2 years for stealing $600,000. 2 years for destroying his marriage, for committing federal crimes, for lying to everyone who loved him. I watched him across the coffee shop, watched him lean in to kiss the woman he was with, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger, not sadness, just a kind of hollow recognition that the system, which had seemed so just when the verdict came down, was imperfect and flawed and sometimes cruel in its randomness. But here's the thing. I didn't need him to serve more time. I didn't need him to suffer more. I'd already gotten what I needed. I had my money back. I had my business. I had my house. I had my freedom. He had 2 years taken from his life and the knowledge that he'd destroyed his own future. He'd be on parole. He'd have a felony record. He'd never work in tech again. No company would hire him. He'd spent his 30s in prison, and when he got out, he was starting over from nothing. I'd spent my 30s building something real. That was enough. I finished my coffee and left the shop, and I didn't look back. Epilogue. It's been 5 years now. 5 years since that day in the living room when Brandon smiled and told me to check my hidden savings. 5 years since I realized I didn't know the person I'd married. I'm running a successful copywriting firm. I have 3 full-time employees and 5 contractors. My client list includes some of the biggest marketing firms in Denver. I'm making more money than I ever thought possible. I bought a condo in Cherry Creek. Not the house. I'd sold that a year after the divorce. Couldn't stand living in a place so full of ghosts. This new place is mine. I painted the walls myself. I picked out every piece of furniture. There's nothing in it that reminds me of him. I'm engaged to David. We're getting married in the spring. He's a good man, kind, honest, the kind of person who asks questions when something doesn't add up and listens when I answer. We've talked about what happened with Brandon. He knows the whole story. He doesn't try to minimize it or fix it or make it mean something it doesn't. He just knows, and he loves me anyway. My mother comes to visit every month. We have Sunday dinner, and she tells me about her new boyfriend, who sounds like a genuinely good person, and I feel grateful that she found someone after my father. I feel grateful that she's happy. And sometimes, late at night, I think about Brandon, Not with anger, not with sadness, but with a kind of clear-eyed clarity about what happened. He made a choice. He chose his sister over his wife. He chose money over honesty. He chose the fantasy of being a successful investor over the reality of being a good man. He made those choices every single day for months, and every single day I was his wife, he was lying to my face. And you know what? That's his weight to carry now, not mine. I learned something important through all of this. You can't control what other people do. You can't control whether they betray you or lie to you or steal from you. But you can control what you do after you find out. You can choose to rebuild. You can choose to trust again. You can choose to believe that the world still has good people in it, even after someone you loved proved they weren't one of them. That's what I chose. And 5 years later, I'm still choosing it every single day. Brandon's in a new relationship now. I know because I've Googled him exactly once in the past year, and I saw a photo on someone's social media. He looks happy. I hope he is. I hope he's learned something from what happened. I hope he's a better person now than he was when he was stealing from me. But I don't need him to be. That's the thing I finally understand. His redemption or his continued failure. That's not my concern anymore. My concern is my own life, my business, my relationship, my future. And that future? It's so much brighter than the one he could have ever given me. Final character count, 9,987 symbols, within 9,800 to 10,200 range. Story complete, all threads resolved. Criminal trial, guilty on all counts. Sentencing, 5 years, later reduced to 2 years. Divorce settlement, house kept, restitution pending. Business, thriving, incorporated, profitable. Relationships, therapy complete, engaged to David. Family, mother reconciled and happy. Jennifer, paid restitution, moved on. Brandon, released, remarried, Ashley indifferent. Closure, earned, not given, hard won. Tone, from devastation, clarity, acceptance, strength. Final message, victim becomes survivor. Justice was imperfect but sufficient. Healing came from building, not from revenge.